February 24th, 2022 began like any other morning. You checked your phone, it's a routine, almost automatic, and then saw it. Russian tanks and helicopters moving into Ukraine. At the time, many believed the war would be short. Some media figures even claimed it would be over in 3 days. But it wasn't. And the reasons why come down to a mix of overconfidence, flawed planning, unexpected resistance, and plain luck, both good and bad. Today we'll break down what actually happened and why Russia's initial plan failed. For a lot of people, the first reaction wasn't panic. It was disbelief. We had seen Russian troops near Ukraine before. Exercises, drills, pressure tactics. The headlines had been warning about an invasion for weeks. And eventually, people just stopped reacting. It didn't feel real. Even on that morning, many thought this was just another escalation, another show of force. Something that would stop after a few days, maybe even hours. And that belief didn't come out of nowhere. Russia was still seen as one of the strongest militaries on the planet. Massive armored forces, a huge air force, combat experience in Syria, Georgia, and Crimea. On paper, the imbalance between Russia and Ukraine looked overwhelming. Ukraine, meanwhile, was often portrayed as divided, under-equipped, and unable to resist a full-scale invasion for long. Even in Western military circles, the expectation was that Kyiv could fall quickly. That's where the idea of the 3-day war came from. Not from one statement, not from propaganda alone, but from assumptions. Assumptions about speed, shock, and collapse. The belief that the Ukrainian government wouldn't have time to react, that resistance would be scattered, and that the war would be decided before the world even fully understood what was happening. But war doesn't exist on paper. It exists in chaos, confusion, and human decisions made under pressure. And within the first hours of the invasion, it became clear that reality was already starting to drift away from those assumptions. On paper, the plan was simple. Advance quickly, meet minimal resistance, and push forward until ordered to stop. In several directions, Sumy, Kharkiv, Donetsk, Luhansk, and Zaporizhzhia, this approach initially appeared to work. Armored columns rolled forward with limited early fighting, but the Kyiv axis was different. Instead of a conventional ground assault, Russia attempted a rapid decapitation strike. The goal was speed and shock. Rather than tanks, they sent helicopters carrying VDV airborne troops, arguably the best trained forces Russia had. Their mission was clear: capture Hostomel Airport just outside Kyiv and turn it into an air bridge. Heavy transport aircraft would then land, bring in reinforcements and armor, and allow Russian forces to push straight into the capital before Ukraine could fully react. On paper, it was a bold and well-known military concept, and not a bad one. Something similar they did in 1968 in Czechoslovakia. What went wrong then? The beginning actually went well. VDV units successfully landed at Hostomel, secured the airfield, and held their positions. Everything was in place for the next phase, calling in reinforcements. Then, something unexpected happened. Explosions hit the runway. Whether it was Ukrainian artillery, sabotage, or Air Force strikes remains unclear, but the result was decisive. The runway was rendered unusable. Transport aircraft couldn't land. Mission A had failed, and there was no Mission B. The VDV troops were highly trained and motivated, but without reinforcements, heavy equipment, or a fallback plan, their options were limited. Elite soldiers can only do so much when strategic planning collapses around them. What was meant to be a rapid seizure of Kyiv turned into a stalled operation, buying Ukraine crucial time to mobilize, organize defenses, and ultimately change the course of the war. And this is where things started to fall apart on a much bigger level. Because the failure at Hostomel wasn't just about one airfield, it exposed how badly prepared Russia actually was. First, communication. Russian command and control was a mess. Many units were operating on unencrypted radios. Some were using civilian phones, and orders were unclear or simply wrong. On top of that, a lot of Russian soldiers didn't even know they were going to war. They were told this was just another training exercise. Some only realized it was real once they crossed the border or started taking fire. That matters more than people think. If soldiers believe their training, they don't carry enough supplies, they don't mentally prepare, and they don't expect real resistance. Meanwhile, Ukrainian forces knew exactly what was happening, and they reacted fast. Now, about the 3-day war. Could Russia have taken Ukraine in 3 days? Yes. If the Hostomel air bridge had worked, if Kyiv had fallen quickly, if armored columns from the north had moved fast and coordinated properly, then the Ukrainian government could have collapsed before full mobilization. That was the gamble. But that's not what happened. Instead, Russian tank columns moving south from Belarus got stuck north of Kyiv. Poor logistics, broken vehicles, traffic jams stretching for kilometers, lack of fuel, and constant Ukrainian ambushes slowed everything down. Speed was everything, and Russia lost it. And while all of this was happening, something almost unbelievable was going on at Hostomel. The VDV were basically left on their own. No heavy reinforcements, no armored or air support, limited supplies, and yet they held the airport for a significant amount of time against Ukrainian counterattacks. That part often gets ignored. Tactically, the VDV did their job. Strategically, they were sacrificed by a plan that assumed everything would go perfectly. When it didn't, there was no backup, no plan B. And that's the real lesson here. This wasn't just about bad luck or Ukrainian resistance. It was about overconfidence, underestimating your enemy, and planning an entire war around the idea that it would be over before mistakes mattered. But mistakes did matter. A war expected to last 3 days turned into something that reshaped military thinking across the entire world. Logistics, drones, air defense, infantry tactics, armored warfare, everything is being reevaluated. Entire military doctrines are being rewritten in real time. All because one plan failed, one airfield didn't hold, and one assumption that Ukraine wouldn't fight back